When did you start following the politics of the pipe?
Well, when Flint, Genesee County announced its plan to build a pipeline, it struck me as I mean, I was reading the stories on it. They said we're tired of being ripped off by Detroit, so we're going to build this pipeline, and it made absolutely no sense to me. The Detroit pipeline has never been used to even half of its capacity. I think it's probably never more than a third of its capacity.
Do you remember when you were reading those reports? Is this before 2010? Is this like back in 2000?
The year that they started the Genesee County pipeline would have been, I think, 2009, I believe.
That's when they were talking about it.
Yeah, when they first started talking about
trying to raise the money or justifying the cost.
Yeah, and they were selling it to the community, and talking about all the benefits they were going to get. They would control their own water, and the unions were all signed up for it because it was going to mean jobs, construction jobs. They wouldn't be dependent on Detroit anymore. So Genesee County complained of being ripped off by Detroit, that they were being gouged on prices by Detroit water. So they were going to go it alone. Well, Detroit had doubled doubled what they would charge, I think 9 million to 18 million. So now they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this water line. And I never saw the return on investment. What was the ROI for it? Because even if you save $9 million a year, how many years do you have to save $9 million to get to 500 million or whatever you're going to spend on your own water line?
Well, even if you spend like 500 million on it, you got interest that accrued. I mean, could you ever get out of that interest payment?
Well, and you don't. And these are not rich. These are not wealthy communities to begin with. So they're going to be borrowing that money from Washington and Lansing, from the federal and state governments. So it's going to be coming from all of us. There's just no way that community can raise that kind of money. But more to the point, there's already a perfectly good pipeline there. So they're duplicating something that exists. And you could have taken that money, those hundreds of millions of dollars, and going into Flint where you need to replace the old water pipes, for instance, and spent that money in the city of Flint, replacing old lead pipes with modern pipes. But instead, we're spending all this money to create a duplicate pipeline that runs 6 miles north of this one. I mean, they're literally separated by 6 miles. Metcalf Road is the southern end of Birchville Township, and Fisher Road, where the Flint pipeline is the northern side of Birchville Township. And in Michigan townships are 6 miles. 6 miles, 6 by 6 is a full size township. Birchville isn't because it's not like Huron. So, but if it were a full size township, it's 6 miles. It's crazy. It's just a crazy waste of money. Well, the Detroit pipeline was planned in the 60s. The planning was done, but it was actually built I think the disaster were 22 or 20, I never remember, 22 or 23 miners died. I believe it was in 1971, in December of 1971. So, but yeah, so it was built. Detroit, remember, that's the height of the Cold War. And at that time, Detroit was considered, if the Soviets attacked the United States, one of their first targets would be Detroit. Detroit, and because of the auto industry and things like tanks were being built there, and then Pittsburgh would have been another prime target. So they were afraid they would get an atomic bomb attack, and Detroit was pulling its water out of Lake St. Clair, which is on the strait between Lake Huron and Lake Erie. Lake St. Clair's average depth is only 11 feet. It's a very shallow lake. And they were afraid if an atomic bomb hit it, it would vaporize that lake. So they wanted to put their water intake in Lake Huron at a deep enough that the atomic bomb wouldn't vaporize it. And that's what they did. And they dug a tunnel. They dug a 7-mile tunnel out into the lake and to the water intake, and put it in the deep water. And that's where this water for Detroit comes from. It's coming from out in Lake Huron. It's Lake Huron. The Indians, or the French rather, called it the Sweetwater Sea. My French isn't too good, but it's Sweetwater was kind of the nickname for it. So it's good good water. Lake Huron is very good. And they piped it. And Flint, well, how much do you want me to go on this? But Flint had tried to build a pipeline of its own in the 60s, and corruption stopped that. They had a scandal so they ended up signing up with Detroit to buy water, Detroit water, and that went online in the early 70s.